Thank you for watching QTV with the news. My name is SUMBWE. We take a look at our top stories. The World Bank has advised Zambia to pursue strong macroeconomic and structural adjustment policies to preserve macroeconomic stability. Finance Minister Wale Ngandu has noted the need to narrow the gap between the commitments made in the implementation of austerity measures and the action taken. And police have arrested Patriotic Front cadres who attacked Justice Minister Given Lubinda. And now the news in detail. The World Bank has advised Zambia to pursue strong macroeconomic and structural adjustment policies to preserve macroeconomic stability, restore business confidence, and improve growth prospects. The latest World Bank Group Economic Brief has forecast Zambia's GDP growth to average 2.7% between 2019 and 2021, which is below 7% required to achieve Zambia's medium-term development goals. The bank has also revised downwards Zambia's gross domestic product GDP growth for 2019 to 2.5% from its projection made in March this year of 3.3%, reflecting the impact of a low crop harvest and deteriorating fiscal environment. Speaking during the presentation of the economic brief in Lusaka under the theme Wealth Beyond Mining Leverage, Renewable Natural Capital, World Bank Chief Economist for Africa, Dr. Albert Zufak, has stressed the need for government to address the macroeconomic challenges the country is facing with a sense of emergency. We have more details in this report.
According to the World Bank's economic brief, economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated to have expanded by 2.3% in 2018 from 2.5% in 2017, and the growth forecast to improve to 2.8% in 2019 and 3.3% in 2020. The brief, which is the World Bank's 12th edition for Zambia, has however forecast Zambia's GDP growth to slow down to 2.5% in 2019 and to remain below 3% over the medium term. Today, at a meeting attended by economists, civil society, and government officials, among others, the World Bank presented the 12th Zambia Economic Brief themed Wealth Beyond Mining, Leveraging Renewable Natural Capital. Samson Kwalingana is World Bank Zambia senior economist.
What are our key messages for growth to jumpstart again to 5%, 6%? What do we need? The most important step for now, and this is again common knowledge, is that fiscal has to consolidate. 2018 debt service to revenue, domestic revenue, was 36% in the 2018 budget. 2019 it's forecast at 42% of domestic revenue, but if you look at first quarter fiscal operations, it was already at 56%. So it's something that needs to be worked, and we know government is doing, it understands this, it has issued a policy statement regarding that. So I think it's something that all stakeholders understand that has to be worked on.
And Dr. Albert Zufek, who is World Bank Chief Economist for Africa, has described the economic growth in Africa, Zambia inclusive, as sluggish.
Across Africa, our growth is recovering, but that recovery remains sluggish. Second, for 4 consecutive years, our per capita growth has been negative, which means our growth is still below our population growth across Africa. We need to work harder to boost growth to higher levels. And 4% growth is not good enough. The third message, there is hope. 5 of the fastest growing economies in the world in 2019 will be in Africa. If Zambia wants to emulate a country, it's Ghana. Ghana will be the fastest growing economy in the world, and it's going to grow at more than 9%. That diversity of the continent and that diversity of growth is also reflected in macroeconomic outcomes.
Ina Ruthenberg is World Bank's country manager, and she had this to say.
And Zambia's poverty levels remain too high. They're not nudging, and with these levels of growth, they will never nudge. It is assessed that a budget need a growth of about 70% to make a dent. And And we haven't been reaching this for a long, long time. So we really need to pay a lot of attention that the situation of poverty doesn't deteriorate further. And as I travel the country, and I love traveling around Zambia, I can see that we are facing really difficult situations. We're facing situations of hunger in some parts of Zambia.
It is hoped that with such reports in place, urgent measures will be put up to help put the country's economic trajectory on course so as to achieve Vision 2020 of Zambia becoming a middle-income economy. Nakaonga reporting for QTV News in Lusaka.
Finance Minister Wale Ngandu says government needs to restore fiscal fitness by taking a more granular approach in identifying the specific actions that need to be taken to achieve sustained economic stabilization and growth. Speaking when he held the first senior management visioning meeting, Dr. Ngandu says there is need for government to narrow the gap between the commitments made in the implementation of the austerity measures and the action taken. He has noted that the current challenge is that measures have been agreed upon over the last few years, but that there is need to step up on action. Dr. Ngandu has called on his staff to take a more professional approach to finance and economic management and to be critical in tackling the challenges that face the economy. He has outlined 3 critical success factors as effective expenditure control, debt management, and enhanced domestic resource mobilization. Police in Lusaka have arrested and charged 5 suspects for allegedly assaulting Kawata Member of Parliament and Justice Minister Given Lubinda during his tour of Kawata Market last Friday. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo has identified those arrested as Martin Mambwekangonje, who has been charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm contrary to Section 248 and conspiracy to commit a felony, which is contrary to Section 396 of the Penal Code, Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia. Mrs. Katongo says others are Patrick Chanda of Zambia Railways Compound, Major Chanda of Mrs. Compound, Moses Mulenga of Chunga, and Goodness Mwange of John Leng, who have all been charged with conspiracy to commit a felony. She says police are still looking for one more suspect who is on the run. Mrs. Katongo says the suspects are expected to appear in court on 17 July 2019. Meanwhile, 6 people have died on the spot, while 21 others sustained serious injuries after the bus they were traveling on plunged into a stream on the Kitwe-Ndola Dual carriageway. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo says the accident happened when the driver of the minibus lost control of the motor vehicle due to excessive speed and in the process plunged into the Mipundu stream. She says the accident happened on 15 July 2019 at about 17:50 hours. Mrs. Katongo says involved was a Rosa minibus registration number ADE 1611, which was being driven by Moses Mususu from Kitwe to Ndola.
There was an accident which happened on Kitwe-Ndola dual carriageway yesterday, 15th July 2019 at about 17:50 hours at Mipundu stream, in which 6 people died on the spot while 21 others sustained serious injuries. The accident happened when the driver of the minibus, registration number ADE 1511, lost control of the motor vehicle due to excessive speed, and in the process the motor vehicle fell into the stream. It has not yet been established the total number of people who were on board and also the identities of the victims. The injured were rushed to Kitwe Teaching Hospital for medical attention, while the bodies of the deceased persons are in the same hospital mortuary.
Government has announced that it will introduce a human development levy that will finance education through the taxing of alcohol, drinking sodas, and cigarettes, among others. Speaking during a joint media briefing of the Ministries of Higher Education and General Education, Higher Education Minister Nkanduluo says there are, among other recommendations that came from the National Education Conference that was held in January this year by the 2 ministries and other stakeholders. Professor Luo says other recommendations made include developing and promoting a multi-stakeholder partnership model for financing education, which involves government, parents, traditional leaders, private sector, and other non-state actors. She has explained that due to the comprehensive nature of the recommendations that came out of the conference, she will, together with her general education counterpart, be setting up a delivery unit which will spearhead the development of an action plan to implement the recommendations in a phased manner. Professor Luo has further stated that the key issues from the conference will be presented to Cabinet for approval and that priority will be set with which the recommendations will be implemented in light of the limited resource envelope.
And the second one is education financing. It is believed in this country that the only financier for education should be government, but that is not the case. So we want to develop and promote a multi-sectoral partnership model for financing education, which includes government, parents, traditional leaders, private sector, and the non-state actors. All of us must come together and put together a model of financing that compels all of us to do our part. The second thing we want to do is to really introduce an educational levy in this country. If you go to some countries, even when you check out of the hotel, and I would like to use Kenya as an example, you see that on your receipt, there's a training levy written there. And we want to look at things that are not so positive for our country, such as alcohol, cigarettes, and to start levying them for education.
Speaking at the same briefing, General Education Minister David Mavumba says if the country wants to improve the economic sector, there is need to prioritize investment in the sector. Mr. Mavumba says the implementation of the conference recommendations will be a gradual journey to transforming the education sector in the country.
So the two ministries are to sit down and begin a journey of trying to summarize the key thematic areas out of those recommendations that were coming, and largely they were around the quality of education, education financing, as well as education for social and economic development. So those are the key thematic areas around where the action plans have to be developed in terms of what we think will be implemented. So this is why, colleagues, we have taken time for not having released the communique, but however, the energies, determination and commitment from both ministers here, as well as our permanent secretaries and our senior leadership in the ministries, remains as it was in January, that this country truly, if we want to improve in terms of our economic standing, one of the most important things that we should give the Zambian people is investment in education.
The Drug Enforcement Commission, through its Anti-Money Laundering Investigations Unit, has arrested a former Zanaco female employee of Lundazi for money laundering activities involving over 500,000 kwacha. Commission Public Relations Officer Teresa Katongo says Fanny Chaponda, 34, of house number RR15, Kanjala Compound in Lundazi, has been arrested for theft by public servant and money laundering contrary to the laws of Zambia. Particulars of the offense are that Fanny Chaponda, on dates unknown but between 1st May 2017 and 31st December 2018, in her capacity as an assistant preferred banker at Zanaco Lundazi branch, did steal 573,910 kwacha 15 ngwe, which she fraudulently transferred from various dormant accounts into 2 accounts she had access to, and later withdrew the funds via automated teller and point-of-sale machines. Ms. Katongo says the suspect further bought 2 plots in Lundazi and built 2 houses on one of them, and also purchased a motor vehicle, a Toyota Allion ARB 3604ZM, and a 49-inch LG LED TV. She says also seized during investigations are several accounts with about 170,000 linked to this fraud. The suspect has since been released on police bond and will appear in court soon. Meanwhile, the Commission in Southern Province has arrested a 28-year-old female Malawian national, Shakina Kasusu, for trafficking in 17.85 kg of ephedrine concealed in 36 bags. Ms. Katongo says the suspect was arrested at the Harimwanga Nkumbula International Airport in Livingstone upon arrival from India. The suspect is in police custody and will appear in court soon. UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema has called for the immediate withdrawal of the Constitution of Zambia Bill 2019. Addressing a media briefing at his residence in Lusaka, Mr. Hichilema has since directed UPND members of Parliament not to entertain the Constitution Amendment Bill when it is taken to Parliament. He has further appealed to independent members of Parliament and well-meaning PF members of Parliament not to support the bill. Mr. Hichilema says once the bill is taken to Parliament, The PF will be able to dupe some members of parliament and get 2/3 majority before reintroducing the deputy minister's position and other provisions such as that providing for a coalition government. He has also called for a return to the dialogue table for an all-inclusive dialogue process to be led by the three church mother bodies. Mr. Ichilema says there is need for broad-based reforms and a return to the rule of law.
I'm directing all UPND members of parliament not to entertain this bill on the floor of the House in case PF forces it onto the floor of the House. I'm appealing to independent members of parliament. I'm appealing to well-meaning PF members of parliament not to support this bill in case PF maintains their arrogance, continues their don't cover, continues their deception. Also support a bill like this. Number two, we must return ourselves as a country to a consensus-based and inclusive, a transparent dialogue and national reconciliation process. We must return ourselves to that table, having discarded this sham of a process instigated, triggered by PF, which has now embarrassed them. Even themselves are so embarrassed.
And Mr. Ichilema claims government wants to amend the Bank of Zambia mandate by stripping the central bank of its responsibilities to print money and regulating commercial banks and other financial institutions. He says the alleged hidden agenda is to return the overall mandate of the central bank to monetary policy. Mr. Ichilema claims government wants to move the responsibility of printing money and regulating banks to some institution or state house so that it can print money at will and allegedly steal money from the printing of the currency. He alleges that the idea to take away the responsibility of supervising banks from the Bank of Zambia is in order for the PF to engage in money laundering activities. Meanwhile, the UPND leader says newly appointed Finance Minister Bwalyangandu will not manage to fix the economy because it is beyond redemption. He says economic fundamentals are broken and that changing ministers of finance is not the solution.
Which one of the PF members will you pick and who is not corrupt? Tell me one who is not corrupt. Make them a minister of works and supply. See what they will do to contracts there. Isabi Kaisala Isabi Ristashan Ngali Rebola Ngali Abola Litampira Kwisa. So don't say no because Bwalyangandu is now Minister of Finance, things will be better. No. What was said to Bwalyangandu when he was being sworn in? Go and fix the economy. Go and fix the debt mountain. But yesterday they were saying the economy is okay. Yesterday they were saying there's no debt problem. So they are admitting that there's a debt problem. If you want 7 to Nafibola, Bwalyangandu, my friend, I know Bwalia very well. He knows. As I'm speaking, he's listening to me. He knows I know him well. He and I know each other from a long way. He won't fix this economy, Mwana. It's beyond redemption. It's gone.
General Education Minister David Mavumba says government will deal with the matter in which a head teacher of Mumba district is reported to have raped a pupil as punishment for being late. Mr. Mavumba has told journalists that the Teaching Service Commission, the Ministry of General Education, as well as the Teaching Council of Zambia will deal with the matter in such a way that it sends a signal to other would-be perpetrators. He says as the ministry begins to review quality assurance agencies, it will strengthen the mandate of the Teaching Council of Zambia to begin to deal with such issues. Mr. Mavumba says this will be done as a way of creating an environment where good leadership anchored on moral and ethical conduct has to prevail in the schools and the society at large. Recently, it was reported that a 50-year-old head teacher of Muyoyo Secondary School in Mumbwa raped a grade 10 pupil of the same school as punishment for reporting late to school.
As part of creating an environment, where good leadership anchored on moral and ethical conduct has to prevail either in our schools, our colleges, as well as our universities. It's unfortunate these are summarized bullet points, but as we begin to look into them deeper and deeper, that particular element that you have just alluded to is going to be dealt with. It's already there, but maybe some of you, our colleagues, in many cases, either you don't get the information of what is happening, because for us, we have already got a code of conduct for our teachers. So if you recall, there was a report which was just brought very recent, I don't know whether it was in Mumba, where a particular pupil, well, I'm not the one who's responsible for discipline, but let me just inform you and the public that as we take those particular matters with very keen interest, and I know our colleagues, the Teaching Service Commission of the Ministry, as well as the Teaching Council of Zambia, will deal with that particular head teacher, so that we also send a signal to the other people who want to abuse our vulnerable children.
Civil Society Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance CSO SUN has predicted a dire situation for Zambia owing to the continued increase in the cost of living and the increased hunger situation in some parts of the country caused by climate change. A new United Nations report has revealed that the number of people suffering from hunger and food insecurity has slowly been on the rise in the last few years, despite progress in curbing stunting in children and increasing the rate of exclusive breastfeeding. The report listed Zambia among the countries and territories with food crisis in correspondence with economic shocks in 2018, leading to food insecurity. Commenting on the report, CSO SUN Country Coordinator Matthews Muhuru says the anticipated increase in fuel prices and economic slowdown and downturn may lead to the situation deteriorating further in Zambia. Mr. Muhuru has urged the government to urgently address the findings of the report and find ways of stopping the further spread of the hunger and food insecurity among Zambians.
The report of the State of Food and Nutrition that was released yesterday by the Food and Agriculture Organization has indicated that food insecurity is actually on the rise in Zambia, and they have actually attributed the high prices of food and as well as the depreciation of the kwacha as the major causes of this food insecurity. So we would actually want government to look at this report and arrest further increases in food, and with the indications that the fuel prices are about to go up, this has a direct impact on the cost of food. So to further reduce the increase in food insecurity in Zambia, we really need to look at this report critically.
The Network for Young People Against Violence has urged political parties to use the Katuba parliamentary by-election as a litmus test towards a peaceful 2021 general election by upholding peace. Network Executive Director Moses Kalonde says political party leaders should strongly denounce violence and advocate for peaceful campaigns and elections in the forthcoming Katuba by-elections. Mr. Kalonde says political party cadres who are the main perpetrators of violence are expected to exercise maximum restraint against engaging in violence. He states that political parties participating in the Katuba by-election are therefore expected to carry out issue-based campaigns and desist from engaging in character assassination for peace to be upheld before, during, and after the by-election.
You know where political violence has actually showed its ugly face. You find that the end result is that you have voter apathy. The women, the young people, even men, or older men, they actually stay away from voting because they are scared of being beaten by cadres. So I think moving forward into 2021, I think we can use Katuba as a litmus test for the peace of campaigns. And also, I think cadres, it's high time that I think they learned to coexist. They shouldn't look at their colleagues just because they belong in the opposition or they belong into the ruling party as enemies. They are not their enemies at all. I think the issue which is there is that there's just a difference in terms of policies, ideals of those political parties. So they should not look at each other as enemies. They must learn to coexist and take each other as brothers. I think that's where we will move forward and make sure that we maintain the peace and order that this country has enjoyed for the past over 50 years.
Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Malanji says government is committed to the construction of permanent structures in missions abroad in an effort to save costs. In an interview with Q News, Mr. Malanji says government is losing colossal sums of money on rent for missions abroad. He says that there are over 35 missions and consulates abroad for which government is currently paying rent. Mr. Malanji says government is working on a program to have the money paid as rentals go towards mortgage so that Zambia can have permanent structures abroad as missions. In 2018, government set aside 20 million United States dollars to implement the mortgage finance program for rehabilitation, construction and purchase of properties in various Zambian missions abroad.
That will save a lot on the national budget. When you look at the amounts of money that we are spending on rentals, it would be prudent to have those monies going towards mortgage, so that in the future we'll have our own properties, and the issue of rentals will be history.
Okay, are you able maybe to state how much approximately is spent on rentals? Approximately, are you able to approximate?
It's difficult to approximate. We are dealing with 38, 39 missions. So, and numbers in most of these missions differ. There are A plus missions like China, London, India, South Africa, Brussels, Washington, DC, New York, where we've got about 13 members of staff in the mission. And there are some which have got less, and then we've even got consulates. So that would need a check for me to give specifics. But I can say it's a colossal amount of money that we spend on rentals. So we are trying to go away from that by constructing our own properties.
To end the news, we take a look at stories making headlines. The World Bank has advised Zambia to pursue strong macroeconomic and structural adjustment policies to preserve macroeconomic stability. Finance Minister Wale Ngandu has noted the need to narrow the gap between the commitments made in the implementation of austerity measures and the action taken. And police in Lusaka have arrested Patriotic Front cadres who attacked Justice Minister Given Luvinda. On that note, we end the news. Thank you for watching.